Today, we answer Australia's Essential 8 framework with Tanium Comply. Well, welcome back to Tanium Tech Talks. I'm your host, Ashley McGlone. And not long ago, we did an episode with Allison Silva on customizing Tanium Comply module for your own audit purposes. And we explained that it really isn't that hard to make Tanium produce your own audit reports with what matters to you. Well, today, our team in Australia has applied those same concepts to answer the Essential 8 framework mandate for compliance there. And I've looked at what they built and I can't wait for you to see it. Now, you might be thinking, I don't live in Australia. Well, even if that's the case, you want to watch this episode, whether you live in Australia or whether you don't, because you're going to see a great example of how Tanium can reduce the time and effort to answer your audits. So, I mean, we're talking about going from weeks to hours. So everyone wins with today's episode. So help me welcome James for his first time on the show. So please introduce yourself, mate.
Thanks, Ashley. Hey guys, James Greenwood. I'm the Regional Vice President of Technical Account Management here at Tanium in South Asia. So I look after Australia, New Zealand, and the South Asia region. I've been with Tanium now for 7 and a bit years. So I was a technical account manager for many years and recently taken over management of the team. Prior to that, I worked at a number of software vendors and in the financial services space.
Well, welcome to the show, James. And I know it's kind of fun when we're recording this. It's the end of my day and the beginning of yours. So
Yeah, we're in the
I'm
future.
yeah, I'm so glad we could connect to do this special episode. So, I just want to start and give some kudos because being in the cybersecurity industry, the Australian government globally really has a good reputation for what they've done around cyber. And particularly, I'm interested if you could explain for our audience today what is the Essential Eight?
The Essential Eight is ultimately a set of eight prioritized cybersecurity strategies that are recommended by the Australian Signals Directorate to protect organizations from cyber threats. So these strategies really aim to make it much harder for adversaries to compromise systems by providing that baseline of preventative measures. So it's called the Essential Eight because there's eight separate mitigation strategies, right? So there's patching applications, patching operating systems, restriction of Office macros, multi-factor authentication, restriction of admin privileges, application control, user application hardening, and regular backups. So these eight mitigation strategies ultimately result in about 152 individual controls that need to be assessed for every endpoint in an organization's environment, right? And it's actually also a regulatory compliance framework. So the Australian government entities are actually mandated to report on compliance levels. And it's also recommended for critical infrastructure as well. So, you think banking, energy, transport, healthcare, communications, all of the industries, if you like, that keep Australia running, that it's recommended that they actually implement this as well. Well, it's not actually mandated today.
You know, my pre-reading before the show, I learned that these were derived from actually real world results of security assessments, understanding where are those compromises. So they've done a really good job of kind of checking the boxes on
Yeah.
not just a routine cyber exercise, but these are the really the places where we see the most impact, it sounds like.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's been built out as a baseline set of controls. At a minimum, if you're going to do anything in your environment, put these eight things in place, and that's going to mitigate the risk of a cyber attack actually, impacting your organization. Of course, there's a lot more that you can do, right, to secure your environment, and this is not everything, but at a minimum, that's what the Australian Signals Directorate is recommending that organizations put in place.
Now, being in the cyber industry, and our audience is familiar with this as well, usually a lot of these standards that we come across basically take NIST or CIS and they just kind of put new letters and numbers on them. So, and then they kind of remap them to their own standards. So I'm really curious, is this kind of a reformat of other standards we're aware of, or did they come up with some of their own things here?
Look, I think it's a bit of both. There's definitely some controls in there that we've seen that do translate from, your CIS benchmarks, for example, but it does go a lot further than that. So things like looking at has a system been patched? Has a critical patch been applied within 24 hours or 48 hours, for example, depending on where that machine sits? Is it internet connected? It takes it further. So it's not just necessarily a simple endpoint. Does this policy apply or not? It actually goes a lot further than that. Do I have vulnerability management tools in place? Am I doing network discovery, etc.? So, there's definitely similarities to some of these other compliance frameworks, but in my opinion, it goes a little bit further, and it's actually very prescriptive, which is great when you want to measure it.
I'm just imagining where people are in the industry. This it's a real challenge for any compliance right out there to really thoroughly answer these things. Can you talk about a little bit of the challenge that you're seeing most organizations are facing as they're trying to come up with the number of teams and tools and time to make all this
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, it's actually, the essential aid's really well documented, and it's mandated for all of government in Australia, right? But despite this, it's really a big challenge for organizations to comply with and even to just measure on. If we look at what the status quo today is, it's point in time sampling. So, an organization will have a consultant come in, an expensive consultant. They'll perform an assessment on 30 endpoints, take the results of those 30 endpoints, they extrapolate that out over 20, 30,000 endpoints that exist in the environment and work out, what my compliance levels are. And I'm sure, Ashley, you'd agree with me, but 2025, that's just not sufficient, right? The other way that organizations try and measure this is through manual surveys. So they send out an Excel spreadsheet to the system owners and ask them to fill in how are they complying with the essential eight. And this is no more than an honesty system or a measure of intent. It's not actually checking the endpoint. So again, that's not sufficient, right? But why is it so difficult to your question? There's really four key areas that have traditionally impeded organizations from understanding the true representation of their essential eight compliance. And as it turns out, Tanium actually solves these issues really, really well, right? So we've coined the term the four C's in order to break this down. So the first is coverage. You've heard this before. Organizations typically don't know how many assets they have in their environment, right? Let alone actually have them under management. And Tanium is able to go out and find every endpoint in the environment, in a customer's environment, make sure they're known, make sure they're managed, and close any gaps when it comes to managing those systems or, measuring compliance. The second C is currency. The data that organizations collect today is outdated due to legacy tooling constraints. So, a lot of the legacy tools have 7-day data retrieval cycles. So by the time you get the data, it's out of date. So how can we actually measure compliance against that? Tanium works in real time. So we can get current state view of the environment. Essential 8 is just another lens that we apply across that data, right? So we can measure that in real time. The third C is completeness. So, like I mentioned before, testing typically occurs on a small subset of endpoints because organizations simply can't get the data at scale, right? They don't have the tools to get the data. Tanium's designed to natively manage very large and complex network environments. So we can go out and get a statewide data rather than targeted sampling. And the last one, Ashley, is, and one of the most important is corrective action. So today, organizations don't have a clear path or an ability to remediate and improve compliance, right? Tanium inherently provides this ability to improve security posture through its management capabilities. We're not just showing you the problems, but we allow you to remediate them as well. And that's really the key part here. We're trying to make this as simple as possible for organizations to actually improve their compliance and improve their security posture.
I really like that last one because, there's a saying in the cybersecurity industry that compliance does not equal security. And that's what I hear you saying as you describe this, because if we produce a manual report, that's okay. Now it's time to fix it. Well, where do you start, right? You don't
Yeah.
even know the machines that are affected. So this is so big for Tanium to really help solve for this in the industry. So I'm really interested to see what you have. Can you give us a demo of what you built?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So look, my team here in Australia, we really spent a lot of time thinking about how we can help our customers with Essential 8. Um, this is not something that's come up overnight. We've actually built multiple iterations of this product. And recently, in the last 12 months, we've taken a step back and taken a strategic approach as to how we can build a capability that really aims to make it simple for our customers, right? There's a lot of complexity when it comes to Essential 8. We just want to make it simple so we can present a dashboard and show even the most junior engineer within an organization how they can very simply start to make a difference in the environment, right? So the first thing we've done is performed an assessment of all of the controls. Like I said before, 152 different controls in order to measure Essential 8. So what we've done is perform that assessment. You can see on the screen here that each control, we've got the ACSC test methodology here, or the ASD test methodology. We can provide you this document with the mapping. And the reason I'm calling this out is because it's important from a traceability perspective. There is a level of interpretation that comes with what's being provided by ASD. So we've interpreted that in a certain way. But from a traceability perspective, we want to give you that. So you can choose to disagree with the way that we've interpreted that and make a change. The great thing about this is it's flexible, it's extensible. You can actually change the way that we're measuring Essential 8 in your environment, right? So I just wanted to call that out. We are happy to provide this to you as a customer so that you can run through that.
All right, so I've got to just say a lot of people have trauma from spreadsheets and audits.
Yeah.
So what I hear you saying is this is a reference. This is not how
It's a
we're going to
reference.
do the work. All right.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
just a reference. Again, traceability, it's important. You need
Right.
to understand how we are measuring Essential 8 in your environment, and this is how you can do that, right? Uh, so, like I said, we took a step back and wanted to take a strategic view of how to do Essential 8 with Tanium, right? And what we've come up with is what we call the Tanium Regulatory Compliance Evaluation Engine. Now, we can provide this to you, whether you're a cloud customer, a Tanium cloud customer, or on-prem, it doesn't matter. We can provide you with the files to actually get this into your environment. Tanium content that is installed onto your Tanium instance that includes some tools and also some custom sensors initially. We then push those tools out to the endpoint. So you can see on the left is the Tanium server, on the right is the endpoint. Those tools contain some configurations, some generic routines, and that are used throughout that process. So we install the tools, we push down the E8 compliance package, which contains all of the custom checks that are used in the comply assessment. And we'll take a look at that in a bit more detail in a second. Those custom checks are called through comply, and they're able to then go and check each individual control on your endpoint. Again, remembering that there's 152 of these, we're checking each of those controls, and then we're able to determine the pass or fail. And that's fed back into comply to report on. But we want to do more than just pass or fail, right? We want to make this simple for engineers to be able to actually go and understand what they need to do to remediate. So we write that out to a results file, which contains the pass or fail, but importantly, the context as to why it's passed or failed, right? We then use custom sensors to return that. We push it into Tanium data service, and then we can build out some dashboards and reports to view that.
Question here, real quick, because I know custom checks are a big feature in Comply. You write your own script that just
Yeah.
returns a pass or fail, and it's nice that you guys are adding that additional layer of interpretation of why it passed or failed. Because when we do comply investigations, it doesn't support those custom checks, so it looks like you guys are really adding some value here. I'm curious how of the 150 some controls, how many are custom checks versus out of the box benchmarks?
So we've actually built out custom checks for everything,
Oh
right? So
wow.
while we could have potentially used some of the CIS benchmarks for completeness, we decided to actually build a custom check for all of those different controls, and then be able to standardize the approach that we're using to actually measure an organization.
Nice. I can see how that makes it clean.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. All right, so look, that's the architecture. Let's jump into a demo now. So, all right, this is a demo Tanium instance that we've got this particular capability running in. So, like I said, we create some custom checks and we on install, they go into comply. So these are the custom checks here. As you can see, there's quite a lot of them, but that's all automated. So when you install this for the first time, it creates those checks, it creates the comply assessments, it imports the sensors, it creates the dashboards. You don't have to worry about that complexity. We've automated that, right? So we just make it as simple as possible for you to install the capability and to start using it. From here, once that assessment's run on an endpoint, we can jump straight into comply reports and view the data, right? So I've got an essential eight findings report here. And, I'm sure a lot of your listeners actually are familiar with comply, but, it allows you to run the checks, run the configuration compliance checks across all of your endpoints, and then be able to interact with that data and slice and dice that data in many different ways. So we're presenting that information here. We can apply lots of filters to that information.
Hey,
So,
quick question before you click off. I'm really just dying to see the little fly out. If you hit the little fly out button on one of those rules with the side panel, great. Yeah, there's the extra details.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, so we've included some description there as well. Um, But what we can do here is actually drill down into an individual endpoint, right? So let's pick this guy here, for example. Maybe I'm an engineer that's been tasked with improving the E8 compliance, essential 8 compliance for a particular endpoint. Well, what I'm going to do here is jump into single endpoint view. I've got a dashboard that we've built out here called Essential 8. And what this is giving me is the status of each of the different mitigation strategies presented purely for this endpoint, right? So I can see that at a glance here. I can scroll down. I can see all of the controls that are compliant in the current state. I can see all of the non-compliant controls. And importantly, why is it non-compliant? Right. So in this example, neither app locker or WDAC is enabled. So we're failing that control. Right. So again, try to make it simple so you understand what it is you need to do to improve compliance in your environment. So this is a single endpoint view. But you're probably thinking, okay, great. That's good if I'm an engineer, if I'm trying to fix a particular endpoint. But what about the whole organization? Well, that's where
Let's
we,
pause for 1 second right here. I want to talk about the three columns. I've read the docs. I know what that's about, but could you tell our viewers what those three columns are?
yeah, sure. So each of the different mitigation strategies actually has maturity level as well. So we start at maturity level one, which defines a minimum set of controls that need to be in place to be maturity level one compliant. And then obviously we get to maturity level two and three, and they become more restrictive as we go, right? So there's three separate maturity levels for each of the mitigation strategies.
I'm just thinking, so that's like 152 controls at three different levels. That's a lot of math. That's a lot of calculations on criteria. That's wonderful that
Yeah,
you've been able to build this out. It looks beautiful.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Look, it's been a great team effort from our team here in Australia. That it's been all hands on deck to get this out the door, and we're very excited that our customers are now using it. We've got it deployed in production at a number of customers. It's running on thousands of endpoints, and it's making a difference. Right, I'm getting great feedback. So um, appreciate that. All right, so let's jump across into our overview dashboard, and this gives us a view of the entire organization, right? So at the top here, we've got some environmental details, total assets, internet-facing assets, etc. And then we break down on the left-hand side here into the different mitigation strategies and the maturity levels, like we spoke about before, right? So at a glance, I can see where I'm at from a compliance perspective. Now, I can drill into each of these as well. So let's go and take a look at one of the mitigation strategies, Microsoft Office macros disabled. So we can drill into this. And again, I can see the different maturity levels and where we're at. And if I scroll down a bit further, now we can see the individual controls, right? So each one of these controls, we return a list of failed devices. Again, we just want to know what's actionable, right? So show me the devices that have failed, and importantly, show me why they've failed. Why am I failing this control for each endpoint? So we can do a gap analysis. What do I need to do to become compliant? We lay it out on a platter here for you. We've done that across all of those different controls. To take that further, an example here, along the lines of trying to make it simple, we've actually applied some remediation actions as well. So we know in this example for disabled macros, ACSC tells us that these policies need to be in place in order to meet the control. So, hey, we've got Tanium enforced, right? Why don't we just build out the policy and then allow you to apply that policy straight from the report? So that's what we've done here, right? So I could go and click this button. The remediation action is actually just going to tag the endpoint and bring it into scope for that policy. And within 30 minutes, an hour, these machines are compliant now. So just trying to make it simple, right?
Oh my
And
goodness. I just have to stop and here and take this in because we began this episode talking about people guessing at a paper survey. And here is real time data across 152 data points across every machine in the place, not a subsample, real time in your face with all the pretty colors and then a button to fix it. I mean, this is I'm sorry. I get excited on this show a lot just
yeah,
as because it really is amazing.
yeah.
Wow.
Look, it is. It's changing the game, Ashley, and I love your reaction there. The best bit is we go into customers and we have this same conversation and we get the same reaction because they're they're the ones living this pain, right? They're the ones working with spreadsheets and being tasked with reporting on this, spending hours and hours every month producing a report. And now they don't have to think about it anymore. It's automated, and the best bit is they can actually show progression and improvement within their organization by putting this in place and very quickly being able to remediate. So yeah,
Quick
it's
question off the
exciting.
top of my head right here. I'm
Sure.
glad to hear about that feedback, and I would be in their shoes as well. So, what modules from Tanium or solutions do I have to own to light up all the capabilities here?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So obviously core, but then also discover, comply, patch, and deploy.
And you said
Right.
enforce, I think,
Enforce is
too. Yeah.
optional, so
Oh, okay.
you don't need enforce for reporting, but you do need it for remediation, right? And it's actually a good point. So what we've tried to do as we build this out as well is provide guidance on how, best practices, how to remediate, right? So from a patch perspective, what we're doing is actually linking out to the patch runbook. and videos that exist there that show customers what's the best practice to achieve zero touch automation from a patching perspective. So just put it all in one place. I can link straight out. I can watch that video. I can come in and implement that as well. Because if we can get these things right from the start, this is just going to the reporting is just going to be an outcome of good IT management, and we can help organizations with that through these different module capabilities.
Well, could you go up one level to
Yeah, sure.
that big dashboard that had all the colors? Yeah, I just wanted to look at this because this is eye candy. This is absolute eye candy. Look at it. You've got 8 groupings of controls. You've got maturity levels with details on each one of these with the color coding. Your team has done a phenomenal job of just real. I mean, this is why we created Tanium reporting and the dashboards for
Yeah.
exactly this kind of thing. And you guys have really taken that and leveraged it to the max. This is beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. I mean, the previous iterations of this, we actually built out, we collected the data with Tanium and we built it out in a third-party visualization platform. But now with all the enhancements that have come into reporting, we've been able to actually um, completely contain this within Tanium and put all the reporting into Tanium reporting and the dashboarding. It's been a fantastic improvement and I think a really good outcome for our customers.
All right, so I've got a question. A lot of these compliance frameworks involve some kind of people and process things that are not technically measurable with something on an endpoint like we do in Tanium.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how do you answer those other kind of the softer questions that are required for compliance reporting?
Yeah, great question, Ashley. And essentially, it's the same, right? There's stuff in there that is either procedural checks or things that just don't exist on the endpoint, right? So obviously we can't measure that. So the way that we're addressing that is we've built the ability to actually provide a manual assessment of certain controls and push those out to the endpoint so that they actually populate that results file that we spoke about in the architecture view so that we can still provide holistic reporting on Essential 8 in this dashboard, right? So an example might be um, backups, right? Regular backups. Your backups may be taking place on a not on the endpoint, but on a storage system, on a backup array, etc. So we can't actually measure that from the endpoint, but what you can do is jump into Tanium, fill out the survey that we've created, uh, which is essentially just a custom package that pushes out a file, uh, and provide your compliance detail and rationale, how you're doing that. And then, as you can see, you can jump in here and we can still measure that all in one place, right? So we can address those procedural and off endpoint controls in the same manner. It just requires someone to fill out that survey.
Well, this is, I'm running out of superlative words to use. This is really amazing. And Americans are not that creative with their vocabulary. So, brilliant, pick your word. This is really well done. I'm just wondering, how do people reach your team if they would like to? Is this something that they can self serve and implement, or do they have to have somebody from Tanium help them implement it?
Look, at this point, we would like to guide you through the process. So if you were interested in this, please reach out to your account representative, whether that's your TAM or your sales manager. Please reach out, let them know that you're interested in this. They'll get in contact with us, and then we can help you through this process. At this stage, I'm really interested in your feedback. So I'd like my team to work with you to implement it and then get your feedback so that we can continue to improve this solution. because we want it to be right for our customers, right? So please reach out. Happy to help you there.
I'm really curious. You said there are several customers using this already.
Yes.
What have you heard from them about like the before and after? Like it took us this long, it was this involved with this many people and tools to now with Tanium. Like what's the transformation that you're seeing with people's ability to comply?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Look, it's certainty, right? That's ultimately what it comes down to. It's certainty. I work with one government customer who is doing spreadsheet based reporting. So they literally email a spreadsheet around maybe, once a quarter to all the system owners. They fill it out and then they send it back, and that's their manual survey, right? They're not measuring endpoints at all. What we're able to do is go in real time, measure every endpoint, show them where the issues are, and then they can pivot and they can actually go and fix these things and see the change in the dashboard like almost immediately. So they've got that feedback loop and continuous compliance from an essential eight perspective. So the feedback has been incredible. They're doing things that they were never able to do. They couldn't dream of being able to do with their manual systems. And we're talking to more and more customers and prospects about this, and there's a lot of excitement. So I think over the next few months, this is really going to become very popular.
Well, James, thank you so much for coming on the show today to give us this. I mean, this really is taking Tanium as a box of Legos, we like to say, and you can build anything you want. And you and your team have really built something extraordinary here. So thank you. Any last comments as far as like where can people go to find more information on this?
So we have a landing page that has all the details. There's actually a recorded webinar on there as well that you can view that goes into a little bit more detail. And please feel free to reach out as well. We want to help you on this Essential 8 journey. And like I said before, Tanium is uniquely geared to be able to help you do that. So please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, James. And for those of you who are watching today, again, a fantastic example that compliance is not security. We've heard that over and over in the cybersecurity industry. Just because you've got a paper form doesn't mean you're really secure. But here you can see with this Tanium solution, not only can you see the results in real time, you can actually affect the change to improve your security posture. What an example. So again, in the show notes below, there's a link to the collateral that we have on Tanium.com that James mentioned. Also a link to that other comply episode that we did earlier where you can see how you can build your own custom compliance checks and things like James's team has done. So we hope that you've enjoyed this tour of the Australian Essential 8 framework and how you can meet that with Tanium. And until next time, go Tanium.